Hello, welcome to Hotline.
Welcome. Great having all of you on Hotline Interface and Hotline. Thank you so much for joining me. It's Thursday, the 21st March 2019. On whatever device you're joining me here today, it is my absolute pleasure. Don't forget, if you don't yet have the One Spot media app, if you don't pay for that service yet, you can get it. And you can also download the RJR app on the Google Play Store so that you can listen to this program if you don't have the chance to listen to it live. And it's repeated on JNN. Thank you for joining me live at home on your television sets on JNN. This is Hotline Interface.
Emily's views, her position on the issues, her point of view backed up by the facts. Here are Emily's views.
Emily's views brought to you by Water, Land of Good and Water, and BPM Financial, taking you higher.
Well, I was not quite ready for the developments of yesterday, but they came. The Prime Minister of Jamaica, in an address to the nation, told the Parliament that according to the Gleaner this morning, I do have the clip lined up for you, but somehow we can't play it at the moment. We'll play it later on in the program. He indicated that the government was serious about dealing with allegations of corruption, malfeasance, maladministration, and he charged that his administration aimed to set a standard of accountability that could not be questioned. The Prime Minister also issued a press release yesterday morning in which he said, "This morning I met with Minister Royal Reid regarding certain allegations in the public domain. In keeping with the principles of good governance, I requested and received Minister Reid's resignation. Minister Reid has also resigned from the Senate. The minister's resignation will ensure that any investigation into matters of concern will not be in any way impeded by his presence or oversight of the ministry." And so unprecedented have those actions been that a number of people have been asking reasonable questions since then. I'm up on a break. When we come back, more in Emily's views.
Emily's views, her position on the issues, her point of view backed up by the facts. Here are Emily's views.
So yesterday was a monumental day in Jamaica's political development. And I now have that excerpt from the Prime Minister when he spoke to the people of Jamaica on a motion brought by the leader of opposition business in the House, Philip Paulwell, and seconded by Dr. Peter Phillips. Here's the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we welcome the questions raised by the opposition. It is important that the country is assured that the government is serious about dealing with issues having to do with the good governance of their affairs, allegations of corruption, malfeasance, maladministration, and that we set a standard of accountability that cannot be questioned. Issues have been raised in the public domain which have caused me to have a conversation with the minister. After that conversation, it appeared to me that given, as the leader of the opposition has said, the sensitivity of the Ministry of Education, that the best thing to do would be for the minister to tender his resignation so that the processes that have been established, and let me be clear that Jamaica, as pointed out by the Minister of Finance, is a liberal democracy. And you pointed out the frequency of elections, freedom of press, and the independent judiciary. But another feature of that democracy is the growing establishment of independent authorities to deal with matters such as corruption and the preservation of the integrity of the state. Those agencies, commissions, organizations are in action. They are doing what is necessary and investigating. Our job now as the administration is to ensure that there is no impediment and there is no obstruction and that there is transparency. I believe that the action taken today by myself and the minister would strengthen the system of our democracy so that there is transparency. We have learned. There is no question Jamaica is evolving and the government is evolving, and this is the standard. Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the other
Prime Minister, a lot was said, but a lot was not said. Is this a convenient return to the conventional principles of ministerial responsibility under Westminster parliamentary-style democracy? And if so, that is a move to be applauded. But is there more? And if so, why didn't we have even the basic outlines of those matters that concern the Prime Minister in his address to Parliament? He said there were certain allegations in the public domain. In the Parliament, parliamentary speech is protected by privilege. And without being reckless, because I don't believe in recklessness, some outlines could have been given. So I believe it is best. I have always clamored for it on this and other programs. It is best for us to stick very closely to conventional Westminster ministerial responsibility doctrine. It preserves the collective integrity of the executive, and it can also diffuse speculation about any criminal culpability of a particular member of the executive when they are axed. Meaning, let me pause and explain that for a moment. If we had a system without question, whenever there are allegations of malfeasance, allegations of impropriety, allegations of any sort about absence of ministerial oversight, if we had a history of prime ministers asking the responsible ministers to walk without any personal blame being attributed to that individual, then we wouldn't be having the kind of speculation that we're having at this moment, and the very broad, the very bold statements that some people have made. But because we have not had this kind of swift action against a minister, the rumor mongering is at an all-time high. Everybody is now professing to have known. As I have said, I had not even the slightest whiff of anything at all before yesterday. And in even saying that, saying anything, I don't even know within this context what anything means. From what I've been able to glean so far and what you have been gleaning, and I spoke with a member of law enforcement yesterday, and this seems to be confirmed. There's one woman who had a contract for the provision of services with Caribbean Maritime University, CMU. The woman apparently authorized an agent in Jamaica to receive payment for work she'd done through a bank account or several bank accounts. That agent, it appears, is listed on documents as being the former minister's housekeeper. And as you may imagine, a lot of questions would arise from that series of arrangements alone. We would need to ask, under what circumstances was this woman given a contract? Did the minister have any say in her getting the contract? Was she appropriately and suitably qualified for the contract? Did the woman who had the contract with CMU do the work for which payment was made? Under what circumstances did the former minister's housekeeper become the woman's agent? Did the woman who had the contract with CMU know the minister's housekeeper before? Are they related? Did the minister benefit in any way from the monies paid by this contract that the woman had with CMU? And there are a whole scores of other questions that could be asked. But I think from where we are now as a developing democracy, we have made a good start in removing the minister, particularly so swiftly. And now is the time for serious investigations. Until such times, you must be cautioned, as I caution myself. Hold your conclusions. Ask your questions, but hold your conclusions. This is a precipitous fall. Perhaps the most precipitous fall I have seen of any politician in Jamaica in recent memory. Whereas before, we had ministers who were members of the lower house and they would remain MP. In Royal Reed, we had a senator. He's resigned from the Senate. The Prime Minister couldn't compel him to resign since he's appointed by the Governor General, and who would better know about the circumstances under which a senator could be removed than Andrew Holness, he having set the locus classicus in this jurisdiction in the court. So he couldn't compel Royal Reed to resign the Senate. But Royal Reed has resigned the Senate, and his political ambitions to become candidate for the GLP in the next election, those appear now to have been shelved, perhaps permanently so. And if there is anything I think we can be sure of from these series of events, it is that an election, parliamentary election, is not going to be imminent at all, because a new candidate is going to have to be found for that seat. They're going to have to make the inroads and so forth. So we're probably going to go as near as possible to the constitutionally due term. But it is a real precipitous fall for an individual. It is sudden, in my view, and it is clinical. But we'll watch it. Ask your questions, as I said. No conclusions. This thing has moving parts, and a lot of moving parts. And I'm not one to speak definitively and conclusively on issues unless I have the paperwork in front of me. And I can tell you now, the papers I have here relate in no way at all to this thing in the media. Last thing I will say in my views, this news about the closing of the embassy in Venezuela. You know, a couple weeks ago when the reports came by the Foreign Affairs Minister about the buyback of the shares and then the OAS vote not to recognize the legitimacy of Maduro. One of my colleagues in media told me, and that was months ago, that he was of the view that this move, which was announced yesterday, was going to be taken place. And I believed him. I didn't know how long I had to wait, but it has come now. What is quite interesting, though, is this. I'm very uncomfortable by the ways in which announcements concerning Venezuela are being made so close to a meeting with Donald Trump in this instance, or the previous time before the declaration of Maduro as illegitimate. And I don't believe that all of these things are as coincidental as we are made to believe. Remember my initial position. I completely understand why the government has had to take the position that it did, however draconian the position appears, in buying back the 49% share that Venezuela had in Petrojam. I get that. But I don't understand why every time an announcement is coming, there's a meeting involving the United States or the President of the United States. I would like a little bit of explanation as to why they come in that way, certainly now in relation to the closing of the embassy in Venezuela. But those are my thoughts for the moment. When we come back, much more on the precipitous fall from political grace of Royal Reed, the implications for good governance. And so the czar of corruption in Jamaica, Professor Trevor Monroe, and his NIA team. Professor Monroe will join me in studio, and we'll join political commentator Shalman Scott on the telephone. This is Hotline Interface.
Emily's Views brought to you by Water, Land of Good and Water, and BPM Financial, taking you higher.
Thank you. We're back with you on Hotline Interface. Moving parts. Big news story, a lot of things happening, listeners, viewers. We're joined in studio by Professor Trevor Monroe, Executive Director of National Integrity Action. Welcome to Hotline Interface again. Good to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
The circumstances are good.
I know. Well,
with you.
there are some good aspects to it, which we'll talk about. Shalman Scott, I heard you on Hotline yesterday. Welcome to you. Good morning to Montego Bay. Shalman, can you hear me? Just a moment. Dr. Garth Anderson will join us as well. He is the president of the Jamaica Teachers Association. And do we have that clip from the Prime Minister where he spoke further about what will happen with education now? Just a continuation of that same clip. Do we have that already? All right, perhaps not. They line it up.
Strengthen the system of our democracy so that there is transparency. We have learned. There is no question Jamaica is evolving and the government is evolving. And this is the standard. Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the other issue raised by the Leader of the Opposition, which is how will the ministry be managed? Part of the role of the Office of the Prime Minister is to make sure that every ministry is being run properly. How I view my job is from the point of view of ensuring that the principles of good governance are institutionalized in every ministry. So once I see that there is a problem that signals a governance issue, a breakdown in supervision and oversight by the minister, then I have to intervene and ensure that those problems are not systemic or deep-rooted. And if they are, to correct them. That is what I did with Petrojam. And the Ministry of Energy. So my first step, Leader of the Opposition, is to ask the Permanent Secretary to give me a full report of the functioning of the ministry. That has already been, that instruction has already been issued. I have assigned earlier today Minister Samuda to go over to the Ministry of Education and to assist in, yes, Minister Samuda is assigned, to
order, please.
I have 3 minutes, Mr. Speaker. Bear in mind they have taken 30 seconds. No, but the point is, Mr. Speaker, that my office will undertake a review of the Ministry of Education. We don't expect to be doing that review for more than a month or two. It's a large ministry, and we will do a full review of the ministry. In the interim, the other point raised by the Leader of the
Let's go to those matters. Puff, your overall opinion on all that has happened. Prime Minister taking over Education Ministry for the moment, could be a month or two to ensure good governance, and he's to get a report on the function of the ministry, but the swift request for resignation, the resignation from being a minister, from the Senate, then from running, and now JC, there may be an issue as to whether he can go back. Your thoughts on all of those things?
Let me take it, Emily, from a very important observation we just heard the Prime Minister making. Jamaica and the government is evolving. Now, evolving means progressing. And I share with the Prime Minister that view, first of all, the Jamaican people. We're evolving in the sense that there is a growing awareness of how corruption is impacting our lives in a negative way, keeping us in poverty, impeding economic growth, and most of all, undermining the rule of law and confidence in different institutions of government. And along with that evolving concern with corruption and the need for greater integrity, the people are having a growing distrust in the authorities, that they're not prepared to act when it comes to those in high places who are connected. They're prepared to act when it comes to the small man who has no connections and no power, no wealth. So that evolution is largely good, except for the growing distrust in our democratic institutions. The government is evolving, the Prime Minister says, and I have to agree with him there and hope that it is not a temporary evolution, because you recall that the Contractor General's report in the middle of 2017 found that there were egregious violations of procurement rules, regulations, and law in relation to the November 2016 island-wide debushing program.
Yes.
Nothing happened. Fast forward to May 21, 2018. Julian Robinson, in the debate in Parliament, I think a sectoral debate, said that the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Energy is a cesspool. Subsequent to that, we got dilly-dallying, dithering by the Prime Minister.
Yes.
In fact, initially, he relieved Minister Wheatley of the energy portfolio. So it took more than 2 months till July 30 before Wheatley was relieved fully of his portfolio.
Yes.
Now, in this case,
Yes.
as part of that evolution, what we're seeing is, certainly from my point of view and yours, because neither of us had a whiff, as you put it, within 48 hours of the opposition raising the matter, and the opposition needs to be commended, because had they not raised the matter, where would we be today?
Right. Let me
And the
just
Prime Minister acted quickly.
All right, let me hold on that, and I want to come back to the concept of evolution, because I can't yet say it's evolution because I don't know what was in front of him. I'm not sure why he acted. Are we returning to, as I said, conventional Westminster ministerial responsibility doctrine, or what? Let me join Shalman Scott on the phone and Dr. Garth Anderson, president of the JTA. Welcome to Hotline and Hotline Interface, both of you.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, welcome. Let me just get your views, Shalman Scott. I know you were on yesterday on this program in Montego Bay, so thank you for that.
Yes.
But I'm not sure if at the time when things happened, if you expressed a view on it. I would certainly have missed that. Your thoughts on...
We didn't have much time, and
okay.
you know, based on the context in which I was operating, there were a lot of people to interview and all of that. So
okay,
no,
so you have the time now. Yeah.
But somebody had called in, and so there was a brief response from me in respect to corruption in the country, and that you know, if we were to pay attention to the history, the formation of the Jamaica Labour Party in 1943 and the People's National Party in 1938, and they're alternating in government. The Jamaica Labour Party having the first 2 terms, and then in 1955 the PNP took over, and they have been alternating in government, and all the talk we are hearing now and the expression of good intentions it has always been the case when we have had these various incidents of either what appear to be corruption or corruption in fact.
Right.
And I pointed out that there were cases, for example, where some sitting members of parliament went to prison on both political sides for selling farm work programs.
On both sides?
From both sides. A member of parliament in St. Elizabeth, Northwest, went to prison for about 6 months, and also A.Z. Malcolm, the first JLP member of parliament for Eastern Hanover, also went to prison for selling farm work ticket. And so it's important that we look at that history and also the responses of these various incidents when they happen by the political parties, because every time we hear the talk of good intentions, but yet at the same time there is a huge gap between what is being said and what is being done.
All right, just hold on a second, Shalman Scott. Appreciate it. Before I come to you, Dr. Garth Anderson, the logical flow of the conversation, and you gave a background, Prof, on the growing awareness of how corruption is impacting us. Shalman Scott spoke to corruption as well, giving the historical context. Do we even know if what is in front of us involves corruption? Do we know what it is, this creature with Royal Reed?
We don't. We know what has been said regarding Heart Trust and TA, CMU, and the National Education Trust. But the point is, Emily, that in previous times we didn't know either. We had allegations. We had allegations in relation to Operation Pride. We had allegations in relation to Traffic Guru. We had allegations in relation to JDIP. And each of those occasions, ministers resigned, but not so swiftly. Prime Minister Joseph Hibbert, again, Bruce Golding requires resignation, but it wasn't as swift. Allegations there were, and Shalman is correct that what the people want now is consequences when allegations are proven to have been criminal or involve breaches of regulations or law. And that's not, we're not seeing that, and therefore a heavy load rests on what the Prime Minister referred to in his remarks, which you played, on the independent authorities, the Major Organized Crime Anti-Corruption Agency, the Integrity Commission, the Financial Investigation Division. The ball is now in their court, and the ball has been in the court of MOCA and the IC from June 17, 2018, when we saw persons with their vests going into Petrodam. We don't have a report yet. So that's what the people are looking for now. Are there going to be consequences for persons who are connected in relation to whom these allegations have been made once they have been established to have some truth and content?
And it's whatever the consequences are. It could be total absolving of any allegations of criminality, but there has to be a resolution, and part of the problem is that we hardly ever get to a resolution. Garth Anderson, Dr. Garth Anderson, I heard the JTA expressing great surprise about the developments yesterday. Have you now come to terms with the developments at all?
Well, we are still in the same position we were yesterday. we don't have any further information than what is in the public domain, and we are still surprised at what has happened.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly something we weren't expecting, but we are hoping that it will have minimal implication on the operation of the Ministry of Education, and we have been in touch with the technical persons in the Ministry of Education to ensure that, especially with the test exam, we have 2 other segments to go, that we will have smooth operation.
All right, let me take a break, Doc. Just stay with us. Let me take a break. Come back with both of you and Professor Monroe on Hotline and Hotline Interface. Thank you. We're back with you on Hotline and Hotline Interface, rejoining Dr. Garth Anderson, President of the JTA, and Shalman Scott, political commentator, both on the line. Professor Trevor Monroe, Executive Director of NIA, National Integrity Action, in studio. Dr. Garth Anderson said they're still in a state of shock, completely bowled over by the developments. But Dr. Anderson, what was the nature of the relationship between the JTA and former Minister Royal Reid? Your working relationship, how would you characterize that?
We had a good working relationship with the former minister. As you know, he's a former president of the Jamaica Teachers Association. So we had a very fruitful and I would say productive relationship with the minister.
Is it that there's any concern now that because of his fall with these allegations of corruption, there's any prospects of a former JTA president or a former principal becoming a member of the executive or a member of the Senate? You think that those hopes would be put in doubt now as a result of this?
I doubt that. I think you evaluate each person once an appointment is going to be made, but I don't see how this is going to impact the upward movement, if you may, of teachers or teachers who want to serve in the political arena or to operate at any level of government. I cannot see that this will impact that. I think the case will be judged on its own merit.
Right.
Yes.
So the shock of your members is because of what exactly? The timing, the suddenness?
Well, this is something that we were certainly not expecting.
Yes.
You understand that Mr. Royal Reid is an educator. He's the past president of the Jamaica Teachers Association. And so hearing these kinds of allegations certainly is very much concerning to us. And as I said, we are very much still in shock and you know, it's something we were certainly not expecting.
Well, the Prime Minister said PEP would be fine. He's getting a report from the Permanent Secretary. Have you sought audience with the Permanent Secretary? Or indeed, Minister Samuda, who is stepping in to fill the gap for the moment?
No, I have no discussion with the newly named minister. I am not sure if he's in office yet, but I'm sure in the coming days we will be having conversation as we seek to continue the business of education. I think the Ministry of Education is important for us to allow the situation to in any way affects how we operate and you know, advance education in the country. So while that is taking place, I think we have to continue to work hard to ensure that we keep the business of education at the forefront.
Right. Before I come to my other guests, any parents of children sitting PEP next week expressing any concern to the executive of the JTA?
I beg your pardon?
Do you have any parents expressing concerns
No,
about the PEP?
I haven't had any parents having parents expressing concerns. And I heard that in the public domain, but from where I sit, I anticipate a smooth running of the other legs of the examination.
Right.
So those plans have been in place now for quite a long time. In fact, I should be at a PEP monitoring committee speak at this particular time, but
okay.
I'm online with you at the moment. So
well,
things
thank you.
are working and things are in train.
Yes. Thank you for taking the time, Doc. Can I then thank you? Anything else you wish to say before I wrap you, Dr. Garth Anderson?
Well, I think publicly I wanted to say thank you to the former minister for his contribution to education, and as an association that we wish him all the best for his future endeavors.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Garth Anderson, JTA President.
May I just say
Yes,
something
Prof.
on that so that there's no confusion? NIA has had a very good relationship with the Ministry of Education, first under Minister Thwaites and under Minister Reid, particularly in respect of our collaboration in the establishment of integrity clubs in schools. So we too have been surprised and shocked, but in the context of allegations of this nature, we nevertheless welcome the exposure by the opposition as well as by the action of the Prime Minister. But this doesn't in any way mar the fact that we have had this collaborative relationship and have produced a number of integrity clubs in schools across the island.
I can't believe that you didn't hear anything at all, Prof, like me. Nothing about this?
I am absolutely surprised. It looks like we're living somewhere else.
Under a rock?
So many people say they heard, and
Yes.
I wasn't one.
Yes, so many people say they heard of things, whatever those things are. But your thought, Shalman Scott, on the housing of education within the OPM for now, for perhaps 1 to 2 months, the Prime Minister says, for him to evaluate what's happening there.
They were a little blurry coming through when you started.
Your thoughts about the OPM assuming responsibility for education at the moment?
Yes. Well, I mean, that's a practical move, and I'm sure that in the short order we'll have a new Minister of Education, and also the Senate seat that is now vacant, which also has implication for the constitution of the country, will be filled in the short order. But I want to respond to this business of corruption allegation, because while it is true that there has been cases of allegation of corruption over the years, there have been also cases where there was no allegation, there were facts, and as a result of that, people went to prison. The National Housing Development Corporation scandal was not an allegation. The zinc scandal that came as a result of Hurricane Gilbert, it was not an allegation, because, as a matter of fact, I was active in the politics, and on the visit of a JLP councillor, there was a 2-trailer load of zinc in the back of that councillor land that was placed there by a PNP MP.
To what end? On the councillor's land or van?
The councillor's land.
On the land. Why?
Yes, on the back of the land.
Why was it placed there?
Yeah, well, that's where it was hidden. They happen clearly to have been childhood friends. But the fact is that...
Oh, that's interesting. JLP MP and the PNP
the kind of complication that is involved in sorting out. So even, not because sometimes something cannot be proven, it means that nothing has happened.
Well, in law, sometimes in law it means that, you know, Shalman. Sometimes in law it means that.
Well, in law.
Yes.
Yes, because that is why, for example, it remains in the realm of allegation.
Right.
But then also, the National Housing Development Corporation scandal was not an allegation, but the Yalas River Valley was the site of a housing development.
Right.
And then the river came down in spate, and it was claimed that all the money that was spent there was washed away.
All right, just hold on a second. Prof, the other thing I've certainly been wondering, why this difference, you think, in the treatment of Andrew Wheatley versus Ruel Reid by the Prime Minister? What accounts for that?
I would say that 2 or 3 possible explanations, and of course the Prime Minister is the only one who could fully explain. I think, first of all, the fallout as a result of the long delay and the hesitation in respect of Wheatley between May 21, when the initial allegations were made, and July 30, when the resignation took place, allowed public pressure to build up. I never forget the meeting we had with the Prime Minister the day before the announcement was actually made, or in fact the day after. The PSOJ, the GMEA, the JCC, NIA, and the umbrella groups of churches. And the Prime Minister was able to say, well, look, Mr. Wheatley has resigned the day before. So pressure really built, and the government has suffered in terms of its public standing, the Prime Minister in particular, because of his outstanding declarations that this is the time for action, not for words, in relation to dealing with corruption. So that's one possible explanation, that he didn't want a similar thing to happen, which leads to the second possible explanation. Maybe it's very, very messy, and he may know that and you and I don't, and to that extent, he wouldn't want another Auditor General's report of 100 and odd pages chronicling all of what we saw in the case of Wheatley, procurement breaches, nepotism, cronyism, and then the government have to take another blow. So I think there are those two possible reasons, maybe a combination of both, and of course himself evolving in understanding that the Jamaican people are now not prepared to put up with allegations that have credibility of corruption in high places, at the same time as see the rule of law applied to small people, but not to those at the top of the society.
Last question, Shalman Scott.
The problem.
Shalman, answer this one. East Portland, is it at all possible, you think, that this, whatever this is, will impact the elections in East Portland one way or the next? 30 seconds.
I don't think to any great extent, because, you know, the matter of these kind of stories are the Jamaican people have sort of reconciled themselves to hearing them, and that more will come. And so I don't think to any great extent, but it may have some impact on maybe independent voters.
Well, we'll watch and see. Can I thank you both? Time is up on me.
Yeah.
I look forward to having your company again at another time. Thank you to my team here at JNN for Hotline Interface.